Look at the tip of your finger for a moment. You're looking at one of the oldest identification systems on Earth. Before passports existed, before DNA testing, before computers, your fingerprints were already uniquely yours. No one in history has ever had fingerprints exactly like yours, not even your identical twin. That sounds almost impossible. After all, identical twins share almost the same DNA. Yet their fingerprints are still different. So, how can that be? Why did humans evolve these tiny ridges in the first place? For centuries, nobody knew the answer. Some believed fingerprints were simply random wrinkles. Others thought they had no purpose at all. But modern science tells a completely different story. Those tiny lines on your fingertips are masterpieces of biology. Every ridge has a story. Every curve formed before you were even born, and every pattern was shaped by millions of years of evolution. To understand fingerprints, we first need to understand skin. Human skin is much more complex than it appears. It is the largest organ in your body. It protects you from bacteria, viruses, chemicals, and injury. But the skin on your fingertips is different. Scientists call this specialized skin friction ridge skin. It is found only on your fingers, palms, toes, and the soles of your feet. These raised ridges create what we call fingerprints. They may look simple. In reality, they are incredibly complex. Under a microscope, each ridge contains tiny pores. These pores release sweat. Sweat helps improve grip. Every time you touch an object, tiny amounts of sweat remain behind. That is how fingerprints are left on surfaces. Long before detectives understood this, nature had already invented the perfect signature. But fingerprints were not created for police investigations. They existed millions of years before humans built cities. Evolution had another purpose. To discover that purpose, we must travel back to the very beginning of your life, not to your childhood, but to the moment you were still growing inside your mother's womb. Fingerprints begin to form long before you take your first breath. They start developing while you are still inside your mother's womb. This happens surprisingly early in pregnancy. Scientists estimate that the process begins around the 10th week of fetal development. By about the 17th week, the basic fingerprint patterns are already complete. From that moment on, they never fundamentally change. Your fingers may grow larger throughout your life, but the patterns simply stretch as your hands grow. Unless the skin is damaged very deeply, your fingerprints remain the same. But how does a baby create such incredibly detailed patterns before birth? The answer begins with tiny structures called volar pads. Volar pads are small cushions of tissue that appear on a fetus's fingertips. They are only temporary. As the fetus grows, these pads slowly begin to shrink. At exactly the same time, the outer layer of skin begins growing rapidly. The two processes happen together. The skin expands. The volar pads shrink. This creates tiny mechanical forces beneath the skin. Those forces guide the formation of fingerprint ridges. Scientists compare this process to wrinkles forming in fabric, or cracks appearing in drying mud. Simple physical forces can create surprisingly complex patterns, but fingerprints are even more complicated. Genetics provides the basic blueprint. Your DNA determines the overall structure of your hands. It also influences the general type of fingerprint pattern you develop. Most fingerprints belong to one of three major groups: loops, whorls, or arches. However, DNA does not determine every tiny detail. Something else is happening inside the womb. Tiny differences in pressure constantly affect the growing fingers. The amount of amniotic fluid is never exactly the same. The fetus is constantly moving. Even microscopic changes in position can influence ridge formation. Every tiny movement changes the forces acting on the fingertips. These changes are impossible to repeat exactly. That is one of the biggest reasons why every fingerprint is unique. But if genetics plays such an important role, why aren't identical twins' fingerprints identical? This question fascinated scientists for decades. identical twins begin life from the same fertilized egg. They share nearly identical DNA. Their eye color is usually the same. Their hair color is often the same. Their facial features can be remarkably similar. Yet forensic experts can easily tell their fingerprints apart. The answer lies in tiny random events before birth. No two fetuses experience exactly the same environment. Even identical twins develop in slightly different positions inside the womb. One twin may receive slightly different pressure on a fingertip. Tiny differences in blood flow can also play a role. The movement of amniotic fluid constantly changes around each fetus. None of these changes are controlled by DNA. Instead, they are small random physical events. Together, they slightly alter the growing fingerprint ridges. These differences are almost impossible to predict. That is why fingerprints become one of the most reliable forms of identification. Even modern computers struggle to find two matching fingerprints. Scientists estimate the chance of two identical fingerprints is extraordinarily small. In practice, no confirmed pair has ever been discovered. This incredible uniqueness caught the attention of scientists in the 19th century. One of the first was Sir Francis Galton. Galton carefully collected thousands of fingerprints. He compared their patterns by hand. After years of research, he reached a remarkable conclusion. Fingerprints remain stable throughout life, and every individual possesses unique ridge patterns. In 1892, Galton published the groundbreaking book, Fingerprints. His work changed forensic science forever. Around the same time, another important discovery was taking place. Police investigators realized fingerprints could identify criminals with extraordinary accuracy. Unlike names, fingerprints cannot simply be changed. Unlike photographs, they do not depend on lighting or facial expressions. They remain remarkably consistent throughout a person's lifetime. Soon, fingerprint records began replacing older identification methods. Entire filing systems were built around fingerprint classification. Today, billions of fingerprints are stored in digital databases around the world. Yet despite all this technology, the patterns themselves still form naturally before birth. But fingerprints are not unique to humans. In fact, several other mammals have friction ridges too. One of the most surprising examples is the koala. Koalas have fingerprints that look astonishingly similar to ours. Under a microscope, even experts can sometimes struggle to tell them apart. This similarity evolved completely independently. Scientists call this convergent evolution. It happens when different species develop similar solutions to similar problems. Wings evolved separately in birds, bats, and insects. Fingerprints appear to be another example of this phenomenon. But why would evolution favor fingerprints in the first place? The answer is still being studied. However, researchers have several strong theories. The most widely accepted theory involves grip. Fingerprint ridges increase friction between your skin and objects. This makes it easier to hold things securely. Imagine trying to hold a wet glass with completely smooth fingers. It would slip much more easily. Fingerprints help prevent that from happening. They improve your ability to grasp both rough and smooth surfaces. Another theory involves touch. Your fingertips contain thousands of specialized nerve endings. These nerve endings constantly detect pressure and texture. Fingerprint ridges may amplify tiny vibrations when you touch something. Those vibrations travel through the skin. The nerves send that information directly to the brain. This allows your brain to identify incredibly fine textures. You can tell the difference between paper, glass, and fabric almost instantly, even with your eyes closed. Your fingertips are among the most sensitive parts of your body. Every square centimeter contains an extraordinary number of sensory receptors. Your brain dedicates a surprisingly large area to processing signals from your hands. This is one reason humans are capable of remarkable precision. We can write, we can paint, we can build delicate machines, we can perform complex surgery. All of these abilities depend, in part, on the incredible sensitivity of our fingertips. fingerprints are not simply patterns. They are part of one of the most sophisticated touch systems ever produced by evolution. Despite more than a century of research, fingerprints still hold mysteries. Scientists continue discovering new details about how they function. Modern technology has opened entirely new ways to study them. High-resolution microscopes reveal structures invisible to the naked eye. Powerful computers can analyze millions of fingerprint patterns in seconds. Artificial intelligence is now helping scientists recognize patterns humans might overlook. Yet the human fingerprint remains astonishingly difficult to copy perfectly. Every tiny ridge contains microscopic details. Every pore has its own precise location. Even the smallest imperfections make each fingerprint different. This is one reason fingerprints are still trusted in forensic science. Today, fingerprint scanners unlock billions of devices every day. Smartphones recognize their owners within a fraction of a second. Airports use fingerprints to verify travelers. Banks use them to protect sensitive information. Many workplaces use fingerprints instead of keys. What once fascinated scientists now protects everyday life. But fingerprints are not perfect evidence. Investigators must always examine them carefully. Poor quality prints can sometimes be misleading. That is why fingerprint analysis combines science with expert judgment. Modern investigators compare dozens of tiny characteristics. They do not rely on only one matching feature. Every comparison follows strict scientific procedures. This greatly reduces the chance of mistakes. Fingerprints have solved countless criminal investigations. They have also helped identify missing persons. In some cases, they have even corrected wrongful convictions. Their importance extends far beyond criminal investigations. They help disaster response teams identify victims after natural disasters. They help governments identify citizens. They help doctors study rare genetic conditions. Some medical disorders even affect fingerprint development before birth. Scientists can sometimes detect these conditions by studying fingerprint patterns. Your fingerprints quietly record part of your earliest development. They are shaped before you are born. They remain with you throughout your entire life. They tell a silent story about biology, physics, genetics, and evolution working together. Every time you touch the world, you leave behind evidence of one of nature's most extraordinary creations. And all of it began before you ever opened your eyes. Every fingerprint is a map of your earliest beginnings. It formed before you spoke your first word, before you opened your eyes, before anyone even knew your personality. Yet those tiny ridges would remain with you for decades. They would touch every book you read, every hand you shook, every door you opened, every dream you chased, every memory you created. Few people ever stop to notice them, yet they quietly accompany every moment of your life. They remind us that extraordinary complexity often hides inside ordinary things. A single fingertip contains millions of years of evolution, months of fetal development, and countless microscopic events. All of them came together to create a pattern that has never existed before and will never exist again. Your fingerprints are not simply marks on your skin. They are one of nature's greatest signatures, a silent record of biology, physics, genetics, and evolution working together. Every time you look at your fingertips, you are looking at one of the most extraordinary stories your body has to tell. And perhaps the most amazing part is this: you have been carrying that story with you since before the day you were born.